Could this replace my laptop? That was a question I kept asking whilst I was using this Huawei MatePad Pro Max, because purely as a piece of hardware, this is one of the best tablets I've ever held. It's unbelievably thin. The screen looks like somebody took a beautiful OLED panel and gave it the texture of paper. The keyboard feels close to a premium laptop than a tablet case. And the speakers sound far too big for something this slim. For the first few days, I really wanted this to work. And then I ran into one problem that could make all of that almost irrelevant. It wasn't the processor, although I have some thoughts for that, so make sure you stick around. It wasn't the battery, it was the software. And the frustrating part is that the better the tablet became at replacing my laptop, the more obvious that problem became. Let's get into it. By the end of this video, you know exactly whether the Huawei MatePad Pro Max is a genuine iPad Pro alternative or a stunning piece of hardware that creates too much work for the person using it. I'm covering the design, the PaperMatte OLED screen, the keyboard, the speakers, real-world performance, pricing, and of course, the Google app problem Huawei still can't completely escape. Because before you spend this much money on a tablet, you need to know not only what it can do, but how much effort it asks from you every single day. When I first picked this up, I was blown away. I expected a tablet this large and this thin to feel fragile. I thought it might flex, creak, or make me slightly nervous every time I slid it into a backpack. It doesn't. The hardware is so convincing that I quickly stopped treating it like an oversized tablet and started wondering whether it could become my main portable work device. The screen was large enough, the keyboard felt good enough, it was lighter than carrying another laptop. Initially, it felt like Huawei had solved the physical side of the laptop replacement idea, like it really had. Then I began setting up the apps that I actually use. That's when the experience became more complicated. First though, we need to talk about how Huawei has made a 13.2-inch tablet feel like it's almost disappearing into your hands. The MatePad Pro Max is officially just 4.7mm thick. That number is difficult to appreciate until you actually hold it. This is a huge tablet that's thinner than many phones once you ignore the camera bumps. The PaperMatte version weighs 509 grams, which is also ridiculous for a screen this large. Normally big tablets feel like, serving trays, right? Use them on a desk or rest them on your stomach because holding one for too long becomes a surprise gym session, and we all know I hate going to the gym. This one feels different. I can carry it in one hand, read it on a sofa, or slide it into my backpack without feeling I've packed in a second laptop. That low weight changes how often I'm willing to pick it up. A heavy tablet may look portable on a spec sheet, but once it spends most of its life attached to a keyboard on a desk, it basically becomes a laptop with commitment issues. The MatePad Pro Max still feels like a tablet. More importantly, it doesn't feel delicate. The metal body finish feels dense and properly built. I haven't noticed any worrying flex during normal use, although I'm not going to perform a bend test on this, that costs so much. Plus, and I'm not sure why it's taken me so long to mention this, but it's blue. So why would I want to ruin that? The slim bezels, clean back and neatly positioned landscape camera, which is encompassed in the bezel itself, so it's not part of the screen, feels awesome and makes the whole thing feel modern without trying too hard. This isn't thinness created purely for a marketing poster. The weight generally changes how and where you use it. And once you switch it on, the physical design almost becomes the second most impressive thing about it. In case you didn't get it, the absolute best thing about this tablet is the display. It's a 13.2-inch flexible OLED with a resolution of 3000 by 2000 at 144 Hz refresh rate and up to 1600 nits of peak brightness. Those numbers are impressive. The paper matte finish is what actually changes the experience. Most glossy tablet screens behave like expensive mirrors, right? You sit near a window or you sit out in the sun trying to do some work, and you're no longer being productive or watching a film, you're watching yourself. And even though I'm quite pleasing to the eye, I know, sometimes I just want to watch the film or be productive. Huawei uses a nano etched surface to reduce reflections, and it works incredibly well. I sat with this yesterday in Battersea Park all day working in the sun, and reflections, glare was a non-issue. Like, I was so impressed. Long articles just feel more comfortable, drawing feels more natural, although I can't draw. Texts remain easy to see, and you still get the deep blacks and contrast that make OLED displays look so good. That last part matters. Some matte screens reduce reflections, but also make colors look dull or place like a slightly grainy layer over white backgrounds, right? Huawei was one of the first companies to push this kind of screen experience, and I know others have followed suit, but Huawei's just become better and better. Here, the image still looks rich. Movies actually look fantastic. Text looks sharp, and scrolling at 144 Hz is beautifully smooth. I didn't expect the anti-glare finish to affect how much I enjoyed the tablet, but it did. It removes one of those small annoyances you normally accept, because almost every other screen has the same problem. Then you return to a glossy tablet or your phone and you suddenly notice every ceiling light reflected across the display. This screen isn't simply attractive, it makes the tablet easier to use, and that's the kind of feature I'm much more interested than a spec sheet that only looks impressive on the box or on a website. This thing continues to be impressive because Huawei somehow fitted 6 speakers into this 4.7mm body, and they're genuinely excellent. The soundstage is wide, voices stay clear, and there's a surprising amount of bass. Plenty of tablets become loud, then harsh once you push the volume. This stays full and controlled. Watching films feels really immersive because the large OLED display and the wide audio work together. I'd comfortably place this amongst the best tablet speaker systems I've actually heard to date. It's right up there with the Honor tablet I reviewed as well. You can click on one of the edges of the screen to watch that review. By this point, I was already imagining using it for films, reading, browsing, and work without feeling as though I was making a major compromise. Then I attached the keyboard. I'm not sure why I said it like that, but the Glide keyboard is another reason this tablet initially felt capable of replacing a laptop. Tablet keyboards, more often than not, feel like an emergency solution. The keys are shallow, the base flexes, typing feels like tapping on a cereal box. This one has 1.8mm of key travel, a large trackpad, firm hinge, and no annoying deck flex during normal typing, even on my lap. I've actually used this to type long sections of scripts, do some research, or productivity stuff, and it feels like a productivity accessory rather than something you tolerate for like 20 minutes before grabbing your laptop. The tablet and keyboard together weigh just under 1 kilogram. So the complete setup is still lighter than many laptops. You also get a built-in slot for the M Pencil Pro, which protects and charges it. That's much better than attaching an expensive stylus to the edge of the tablet and hoping it's still there when you pull everything out your bag. Here, it has a proper place. The keyboard, trackpad, and pencil storage makes the whole setup feel considered. It doesn't feel as though Huawei designed a thin tablet, then remembered at the last minute that some people might want to type on it. Once everything was attached, the MatePad Pro Max looked and felt like a serious work machine. The next question was whether the performance could support that idea for several years. Thoughts incoming now. Inside is Huawei's Kirin T93 Pro processor, which is built on a 6nm process with 12GB of RAM. My real-world experience is straightforward. I haven't had problems with stuttering or slowdown. Apps open quickly, multitasking feels smooth, I can run 3 windows, move between documents, watch high-resolution videos, and use drawing apps without the tablet feeling stressed. Huawei has also built a serious cooling system into this incredibly thin tablet, and temperatures have remained controlled during my use. I've not noticed it getting uncontrollably warm, even when I was staying out in the sun yesterday. The tablet feels fast. My concern is what happens later. The Kirin chip doesn't compete with Apple's latest M series, the M5 processor, and falls behind even the M4 in pure performance. That may not matter today if you mainly use the tablet for reading, note-taking, browsing, drawing, watching films. Those tasks run pretty well. The question is how the processor will cope several years from now when apps become more demanding and operating systems become heavier. It's the same concern I've had with some of Huawei's recent phones. I love the hardware and the performance is fine now, but I'm less certain about the amount of power being held in reserve, if that makes sense. For me, that matters. Most people don't replace a tablet every 12 months like they may do with a phone. It's the kind of expensive device you buy and expect to keep for several years, like a laptop. So when you're spending flagship money, long-term performance and software support are completely fair things to question. Huawei makes some of the most premium feeling hardware on the market, especially when it comes to build quality. Naturally, you want the performance to age just as well as the body and the screen. Still, the processor isn't the main thing holding this tablet back. The hardware has already won me over. The software was where I began questioning whether I could actually recommend it. The MatePad Pro runs HarmonyOS, and the interface itself is clean and easy to understand. Huawei Notes is useful. GoPoint is generally a strong drawing app for those who can. I was actually surprised by how in-depth the features were for this thing. But like I said, I can't actually draw, but for those of you who can, it's going to be actually awesome. Multitasking is actually simple, and 3 apps can actually run together without screen becoming a mess. If you only looked at Huawei's own software, the tablet would actually feel polished and coherent. The problem begins when you want to bring your existing digital life onto it. As you all know, there's no native Google mobile services and no normal Google Play Store. You can't treat this like a Samsung tablet, for example. You can't sign into your Google account, press restore, and watch all your usual apps fall back into place. App Gallery still misses many mainstream Western apps. That doesn't mean you can't access them. There are workarounds. GBox is usually the quickest. It creates a virtual environment where you can sign into your Google account and run many Google apps. Some apps behave differently. Notifications can be less dependable. Services that rely on device certification, security checks, or digital rights management do cause problems, like Netflix not being able to watch 4K HDR and even YouTube in the app itself. The other popular route is MicroG with Aurora Store. MicroG replaces parts of Google Play services, while Aurora lets you download many of the apps that would normally come from Google Play. It's actually really cool and works really well because Aurora Store basically acts as your alternative Google Play Store, and plenty of apps work perfectly well, including banking apps. Because I understand how the system works, I don't actually mind spending some time setting things up. I guess for tech enthusiasts, it can almost be part of the experience. The problem is that understanding the workaround doesn't turn it into a normal, seamless setup. That's the part people often skip when they say, just install the Google apps. Yes, you can get a lot of them working, and I haven't had any ones that haven't worked so far. No, the problem hasn't completely disappeared, and the real frustration didn't arrive whilst I was setting everything up. It arrived when I thought about maintaining it. The bigger issue isn't installing everything once, it's looking after it afterwards. On a normal Android tablet, apps update in the background and you barely think about it. Here, you need to remember if you install the app through App Gallery, Aurora, or was it just a web app that you installed through an APK? I guess my thoughts on this is, if a banking app, streaming service, or work tool checks for official Google certification and it works today, there's no guarantee the workaround will continue behaving the exact same way 6 months, 1 year, 2 years from now. Because we don't know if the ban is going to be lifted by the US, and we don't know if this is going to continue working for us, you know? For tech enthusiasts, the extra setup is going to be manageable. But for a normal buyer, spending more than £1,000, it's a friction that shouldn't exist. You're not buying a project, you're buying a premium tablet. A premium device should disappear into your routine. It shouldn't turn you into an unpaid IT support. And I know a lot of you probably do that for your family anyway. This is where the tablet's greatest strength becomes part of the frustration for me. The hardware is so good that I wanted to use it for more important things, work documents, email, video, cloud storage. But I didn't want to troubleshoot everyday services, you know? The closer it became to becoming my main device, the more I needed the software to be dependable. And at this price, every compromise becomes more, I guess, difficult to excuse. And it's not Huawei's fault, it's just the predicament they're in at the moment. At the time of recording this, the standard tablet has been listed at £899.99, reduced from £1,000 basically. The keyboard bundle has been listed as £1,100, reduced from £1,200. The M Pencil Pro costs another £130 on top, although with this keyboard bundle, you get it free, which is quite good. At full recommended retail price, the keyboard bundle and pencil push the complete setup beyond £1,300. That's iPad Pro territory and MacBook Air territory. Samsung's accessories aren't cheap either. The difference is that those tablets aren't asking you to build a small bridge around their app stores before your normal services will work. The issue is that the price places the MatePad Pro Max beside devices that offer more straightforward access to mainstream apps and services. That makes the decision much less about whether you like the hardware. I love the hardware. It's a question of how heavily your life depends on the software Huawei can't provide natively, and how willing you are to actually spend that extra time to make sure it does work. The UK model has a 9760 mAh battery with 66 watt wired charging. It comfortably handles a work session, entertainment and browsing without me thinking I constantly need the charger. It's light enough to carry, the battery lasts well and through the day. The keyboard is good enough for proper typing, but there's no backlight on the keyboard, so make sure you bear that in mind. The display is a pleasure to look at, and the speakers make films feel far more immersive than you would expect for something this thin. So, who should actually buy this exquisite looking tablet? I would consider the MatePad Pro Max if the screen is your top priority. It also makes sense if you draw, take handwritten notes, already use Huawei devices, or mainly want a beautiful portable machine for reading, films, browsing, and light office work. GoPaint, Huawei Notes, WPS Office gives it a strong foundation. As I mentioned, the keyboard is excellent, and the speakers are outstanding. The PaperMatte OLED is genuinely special. I can completely understand why someone would love using this, because I have. You should probably avoid it if your work or personal life heavily depends on Google Apps, certified streaming services like Netflix, even YouTube. I mean, to be honest, streaming this with what's on offer in terms of the quality, it still looks incredibly good. And using the Chrome browser to access YouTube, you can still go up to 4K, but there's no HDR option. But workarounds can change, apps can change, certification requirements can also change. I guess you need to be completely comfortable dealing with that possibility. For the average person who wants to sign in, restore their apps and get to work, it's extremely difficult to recommend at this price. The hardware is world class. The software experience needs to match it. I hope you've enjoyed the video as much as I've enjoyed making it. Watch my Honor MatePad 4 review on the screen now to see the Android tablet that gives you fewer software headaches and is like half the price of this one. I'm Maz, and this is MazTechCentral, where I like to keep tech simple and accessible for everyone. Catch you guys in the next one. Take care of yourselves. Bye now.